The University of Pennsylvania has been at the heart of this debate over transgender athletes since Lia Thomas won the NCAA Division I championship in the 500-yard freestyle 3 years ago. Now, the Department of Education says after an investigation, the university's agreed to keep transgender athletes out of women's sports, restore titles to the women who came in second, use biological-based definitions of man and woman moving forward, and issue apologies to affected female athletes.
We have signed an agreement with them, and we hope that that agreement is going to be a template for other universities who acknowledge that there is no room for men and women's sports, not only during the competition, but also in the locker room.
Education Secretary Linda McMahon told Fox's Laura Ingraham it was important also for women's abilities to get scholarships and awards.
They have to be able to enter into these sports and to feel safe. I mean, Peyton McNabb got a volleyball smashed against her face, broke her nose.
Oh, God.
And she had brain injury from it.
Penn's president, J. Larry Jameson, wrote a letter saying they're updating their policies to comply with federal executive orders and updated NCAA rules, noting they believe they were operating in accordance with Title IX as it was interpreted then. The federal civil rights law, Title IX, protects anyone at an educational institution against sex discrimination. Now, under the Biden administration, Title IX was expanded, so protections included gender identity, but this was not applied to sports. The NCAA policy left things up to individual schools based on the sport and said transgender athletes could compete in certain events after a year of testosterone suppression. But after President Trump signed an order this past February titled Keeping Men Out of Women's Sports, the NCAA changed policy, and the Department of Education threatened certain funding to schools that didn't comply, announcing investigations into San Jose State, the Massachusetts Interscholastic Athletic Association, and the University of Pennsylvania. Penn was threatened with a loss of $175 million in federal support.
I first felt, there's a lot of different emotions, I think is the best way to describe it.
Paula Scanlan swam on the same team at Penn with Lia Thomas. She's now a senior fellow at the American Principles Project.
It's definitely a big win to see the Trump administration hold the University of Pennsylvania accountable. And I think it really shows how strong they are as leaders. And I think that was my biggest takeaway, is that they are delivering on their promises and they are able to get things done and, again, make change in this country and force these institutions to start the process of making change.
Yeah. Tell us about what this was about and your involvement. This was because Lia Thomas won the NCAA Division I championship in the 500-yard freestyle back in 2022, I think. Remind us of that time. You know, what happened after that and how you felt treated by the university back then.
Yeah, so Lia Thomas obviously won the NCAA championship in the 500-yard freestyle, but there was so much more that happened before that even. Before that even happened, he was put on our team. He was previously a member of the men's team, and the university said he wants to be a woman, therefore he can join the women's team, and he was undressing in our locker room 18 times per week, competing alongside us, going to meets. And when we tried to raise our concerns to the athletic department, they told us that him being on the team was a non-negotiable. They said if we ever spoke out against him being on the team, that we would regret it. We would spend the rest of our lives tainted by it. They said that anyone who wants to hire you will look you up and see what you've said about this, and they will know that you are a transphobic bigot and they will never want to hire you. And another thing that they told us was they said if you're uncomfortable undressing in a locker room with this 6'4" tall, fully grown man, it's equivalent to not wanting to undress with somebody based on their race in the 1960s. So they tried to, again, tell us we were racist for not wanting to undress with a man. And the last thing that they told us was if we objected to everything that they've said so far, you are the problem, you need help. And they gave us the number for an on-campus psychological counselor. And they said, please go make an appointment because you need therapy. And so that was really what was going on the entire season. And of course, you know, it's a man competing in women's swimming. What do you expect? He went on and won an NCAA championship, beating out Olympians in the event he ended up winning, which, again, I think just shows how ridiculous this really was.
Riley Gaines was on with Harris Faulkner Wednesday, and she said one of the things she felt was surprise, given everything you just said, that the University of Pennsylvania was willing to restore titles, issue apologies after all that. Do you feel that way? Do you feel a little bit of surprise that 3 years later this is the about face? Or is it just, look, this was the situation, the Trump administration came in, and so this is what we were faced with, losing grant money, like we had no choice?
I was a little bit surprised, and it wasn't even just because of my negative experience at the University of Pennsylvania, where they showed no signs of even acknowledging that my viewpoint was even valid in any way, shape, or form. But the reason I was so surprised was because of seeing Harvard having the opposite reaction. So really what we're looking at right now is you sort of have the tale of two Ivy League schools that are going at it with the Trump administration. We have Harvard, who's doubling down on their stance on all the different things the Trump administration has started to investigate them on. But the University of Pennsylvania did the exact opposite. They came in, they bent the knee, as they say, and they said, actually, we're going to work with you here. We do fear you as an administration, and we are going to make change. And a lot of people can say it's in response to the negotiation table, but ultimately, I think that the Trump administration is doing the right thing here. And I hope to see more schools come in and say, actually, yeah, I want to discuss this. I want my funding back. Maybe I will make these changes.
The University of Pennsylvania, as you know, is saying in response to this that while they are shifting here, that they always complied with Title IX. I understand you have a thought about them insisting that they've always been in compliance.
I saw that as well. And it's, sure, maybe they were in compliance with the NCAA policy, but my question to that is, when did we decide that the word woman meant something different? Because as far as I'm concerned, Title IX has always been clear. It should be clear to anyone who really has brain cells in this country. But for some reason, we're saying, last year, the word woman and female meant something different than it does now with Trump being president. I mean, that is what we're dealing with here. And I don't care who was president. I don't care what terrible ideas the Biden administration was trying to put in at the time. Title IX to me was very clear. And no matter how you spin it, the University of Pennsylvania directly violated that by allowing Lia Thomas on our team.
Well, and the University of Pennsylvania said they complied with Title IX as interpreted then. Just for people who are a little bit confused by all of this, while the NCAA sort of left transgender sports policy up to individual schools before they went ahead and changed their policy this year, the Biden administration had expanded Title IX, but notably did not address transgender athletes in sports. Were you all confused as this was unfolding? How should this be handled?
The thing that's interesting is the Biden administration did have a lot of literature that they wanted to write about these transgender athletes, but I think that they started to realize how wildly unpopular it was. I mean, this issue, there's many things we can look at to why Trump won the presidency this past November. But this issue is a huge one. And in fact, even people who voted for Kamala Harris, and I probably voted for Joe Biden as well, they agree with us on this issue. And so I think we're in a little bit of a situation where the Democrats are realizing that this maybe doesn't quite match their voter base. So they're trying to pretend either they never did it. I mean, after the election, we saw a couple of, lower level House representatives or people at the state level pretending like they never said that, or changing their viewpoint even on the whole women's sports issue. So I think it just shows that this really is an issue of common sense and not left versus right.
Yeah, what do you think this means for future girl athletes in that vein? Because these are based sort of on President Trump's executive orders, right? The NCAA changed its policy after the president signed this executive order titled, keeping men out of women's sports. Do you think that the future for girls is bright here, or that all of this falls away with a different type of administration? It's not like Congress passed a law here. How solid is this?
Yeah, that's exactly the thing that kept me up last night worrying about, to be honest with you. It is worrisome to see, what could happen in the next administration. You're right. There is no official federal law passed on this. But what I will say is I think that this shows, at least in some way, the fact that the University of Pennsylvania was able to come in and say and change the policy, it does admit some type of fault. It does show that there is evidence to say that they were in the wrong. If they truly believed and stood by their stance, they would have continued to push back. They would have not gone to the negotiation table and agreed to these things. And so I think we have that as evidence. But back to what I had just previously said, I think what we're really seeing is even Democrats do not agree with this. And we are hoping to continue to mobilize on that. And again, if a Democrat comes in and then, 4 years from now, hopefully there are people in that voter base that helped elect this person that are on our side. And I do know that there are, because I really believe this is a 90-10 issue. I think 10% of the population is standing by this. The other 90%, no matter who they are, what race they are, what background they are, where they're from in this country, they agree with us. And I want to keep capitalizing on that. I think we'll keep mobilizing that. And I know that we will win. And I think this is a great first step.
Finally, when Simone Biles came out and trashed Riley Gaines on this issue, saying, she should uplift transgender athletes or find a new avenue for them to feel safe. You're saying this is a 90-10 issue, but is there a divide? Like, have you encountered female athletes who, either really want transgender athletes to compete with them or against them or in the same space as them? Like, what is the answer here for, even if there aren't so many transgender athletes, for those that do want to participate in sports? If somebody were to ask you what the solution is here, what do you say?
Yeah, I think there's a pretty obvious solution here. I think if you're born male, you compete in the men's category, and if you're female, you compete in the female category. Lia Thomas, my former teammate, he was a member of the men's team for 3 years. He could have continued to stay on the men's team. He could have decided to grow out his hair and change his name and put on a women's suit. All of those things could have been done, and that's his own personal decisions that I really don't care if he does. But he could have continued to compete in the men's category, and I think that's the answer here, and that's what they should be doing. And again, this is not to exclude anyone from anything at all. I think that sports have sex-based categories for a reason. Women have fought so hard to have our own categories and have our ability to compete, and I think it's important and crucial, really, that we preserve that.
We know other universities are being investigated or were being investigated, like San Jose State. As this issue sort of fleshes out here, if it becomes a precedent, if other universities sort of shift policy, is that how this sticks, regardless of a law, regardless of a policy? Like, if universities say, we're going to follow this lead, then is it less likely that it shifts or changes back in the future?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I think we're in a position now where we have to make these changes culturally and really convince the people that this is not what they want. And I think more universities stepping in and making these decisions, federal law or not, will help these changes. And, the University of Pennsylvania, they're still yet to issue the formal apology to the team specifically. And I'm excited to see what they have to say. I want to see how genuine it is. But I do really think this is a strong first step in getting there and showing other universities that, yes, you should bend the knee. You should, give up having men and women's sports, and just seeing the response to this. I think it's been majority responses I've seen have been very, very positive, and people are very excited about this. And yeah, I had even people who, I had friends who were Democrats actually message me yesterday saying that they were excited about the news. So I think that really tells exactly where we are culturally on this.
Paula Scanlan, thank you so much for joining us and giving us your insight. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me on today.